The prices of properties and the prices, surprisingly, of rent is going up all over Canada, all over the United States like crazy. We got some charts to show you, and this is going to be good for landlords, it's good for renters as well to know what is happening in your market. So for landlords, we might be wanting to increase our rents. But for the renters, they want to move into places that they're going to get more value for their money. So let's take a look at what's going on in the markets. We're going to be doing both Canada and the United States today. So let's start off with Canada. When we're looking at Canada, Canada is a very wide country, but almost everybody lives right close to the border. So if we're going down, you're going to see Vancouver is a big city in Canada, Toronto, big city, and then we have some smaller places. Now, there are some rules that happen every single time we run into a type of crisis, either from cost or a recession. So one of the rules is that two beds usually will command more money. But you see here in Vancouver, it is up higher, 21% year over year and 17% on for one bedrooms. First of all, 20% increase in prices. I can't even believe that. I mean, that is crazy. That I've never seen anything like this, but this is what happens when you print a lot of money, you guys. So it doesn't matter if you're going to be talking about a country in Europe or Australia, whatever. If we print money, this is what happens. And if you wanted to know more about that, I mean, just study what happened in Weimar, Germany a long time ago. And if you don't even want to look at what happened there, just look at what's happening today in Lebanon, Venezuela, Argentina. Not Arizona. All right. So if we look at Toronto, Toronto is surprising for me that two bedrooms actually are not as much as one bedroom. One bedroom's 22%. And Toronto is at 19% for two beds. So that is quite surprising. But again, Etobicoke, same thing, two bedrooms are more, 20%. Can you believe these prices that in Toronto, the average two bed is $3,286. The average two bed in Vancouver, $3,653. This is shocking prices, right? And it's also surprising to me that Vancouver is the most expensive. Toronto's number two. The third most was Etobicoke, which is just, it's partly in Toronto and partly outside of Toronto. It's just on the border of the city, but smack dab in the middle of the greater Toronto area. So I'm really surprised to see such a huge spike in prices there. Burnaby, BC, shocking to see a 25% increase for two bedrooms. $31.39 is the average for prices there. But as you look down the list, almost all the places that we generally hear about on the news are all up 15 to 20%, some 25% at the outliers. Now, there is some softer increasing areas. So we know we're not surprised to see on the rest of the very, very, very expensive ones, we see that it is to top out the rest of the list, Burlington, North York, Vaughan, Halifax, Brampton, Victoria. Those are all the usual suspects, if you will. Where it's nice to see Kitchener, Ontario is only 15.9% for a two bedroom at $2,300, and Kitchener is at $1,925. So that's good. But the best places in Canada are usually going to be in Alberta or Saskatchewan. Saskatoon, Edmonton, Red Deer, Lethbridge, and Lloydminster is coming at the cheapest rent in the country at $925. That's pretty interesting. Now, if we're going to move over to the United States, we're seeing that national levels in the United States are also going up. So don't pay attention to the yellow line. That's just the percentage of difference. But we want to look at these blue blocks that are here. So if we just look at 2019, so before all of the problems that we had, we see that rents were fluctuating between $1,600, $1,619, $1,630. But now we saw when they started money printing, like on cue, you guys, on cue. April 2020, just check that out. Prices already went up to $1,682, $1,740 by that July. Then look at where we were in 2021. All of a sudden, $1,790. It peaked out until last August, which is when we know we started to turn on the interest rates, all the way up to over $2,000, which is really, really, really expensive. So if we're going to look at the ones with the highest year over year growth, South Dakota up 24%. That's a shocker to me to see that. Mississippi is up 18, New Hampshire is up 15, North Dakota up 14, Arkansas 13%, Alabama 12%, Iowa 12, Florida 11. I'm surprised Florida is not much higher than that. Delaware, not surprised, and Nebraska is 10. So why are we not surprised by some of these? Some of these we're surprised about and some we're not. But North Dakota, 14%, not very surprised there because Fargo is there and so much business is moving there. Florida, so much business is moving there. Delaware, amazing companies can be built in Delaware, very friendly for business owners. So some are a surprise, but we are seeing an increase of the population moving south to where the weather is better and the taxes are less. If we take a look at the country overall and we take a look at where rents are, we can see that the darkest blue is up 24% and the yellows are down. So where is the rents actually down? In the Northeast, it's down. I'm surprised to see Nevada down. I'm not surprised to see Idaho and Washington down, but we see primarily the Southeast is very full, whereas the Northwest is actually going down. So this shows you what demand is like in those areas. Now, here's the thing. For renters, I always like to look at Canada and the United States. You know, we're very much the same. It's almost the same. We're cousins. If you look at from 2000 to today, so it looks like on the chart that we're showing you, sorry you can't see it on the podcast, but over the time, it's fluctuating between 63%, 65, 67, back down to 63. The average is always 65%, regardless of what year that you're looking at. But if we look in the United States, it's always similar too. If we go back to 1990, 64%. It topped out in 2004 at 69%. But when the financial crisis hit in 2008, we see that it dropped from 67, 66, 65, 64, 63. And prices went down a lot, and then it started rebounding again in 2020. Home participation ownership rates went down again. And this is another rule that you have to follow, is that every time that there's a financial crisis, obviously people cannot afford their bills. They obviously are going to end up losing their home, going into foreclosure or something like that. It's purchased by larger companies and put on the rental markets. But everybody is always afraid of one side versus the other, tenants versus landlords, and it's not a fight. We need 35%. Now, it doesn't matter if we look at Australia, Europe, it doesn't matter where we look. We always need rentals. There's always going to be seniors or people who had divorces, or there's always going to be young people or whatever, people immigrating to the country. They want to jump into a rental. We need rentals. 35%. That's the magic number. And so it's not a bad thing to have, but where is the problem? The problem is we need supply. Prices are going up because they're not building anything. So in Canada, we are kind of locked in. We barely build any properties, yet we had over 1 million people brought in as immigrants and refugees last year. So where do they go? They just have to pile on top of each other and live in more densely packed houses. So we'll walk into properties and there's going to be 12 people living in a 1-bedroom. Like, what do? There are no houses, and labor and materials so expensive. It's almost impossible to build homes right now that are affordable, entry-level homes. So as you see in the United States, always sitting in that 65% range as a whole. Canada bouncing between 65, 67, always as well. So just remember that home ownership rates drop in a recession, which is the time that you want to be looking at to purchase a property. Actually, that could be a really great idea. So we hear all the time about the bad sides of the rental and landlord relationship. Renters are very mad that prices are going up, and they're going up at astonishing rates, as you can see. So let's take a look at some of the tips that I have for you. So number one, for renters, things are costing more and they are not happy about it, okay? But what is the prices going up? You know, in some places you are rent controlled, in some provinces and states. In some provinces and states, you're not. So it doesn't affect everybody the same. So if you are a renter, we know that your cost is going up, but in a place that is rent controlled, like Ontario, where I am, it's maxed out this year at 2.5%, even though inflation is much higher. So if you are a renter in a rent controlled area, stay put, don't move, stay in your location. And we talked to tenants before, they're like, but I want a 3rd bedroom, I'm like, okay, but I can't afford it. So you kind of have to you gotta suck it up, be a big boy or girl, and deal with it. Okay, so I would say you gotta stay where you are right now and enjoy only 2.5%. If you move out, then you have to pay that 25% more, like we're seeing on the list in prices. So stay put for now. Now, everyone says that landlords are evil, but Listen, I am a landlord myself. Our mortgage payments are up on, I mean, a lot, a lot. In many cases, we're having properties that are 50%, 60% more on our mortgage payments, which is blowing our cash flow out of the water, which is really, really bad. So whatever your increase is, it's nothing to what the landlords are facing. We know that condo fees have gone up across the board everywhere. Remember, condo fees are going to be paid to pay for all the staff that is at the front door and everywhere else, and they're getting crushed by inflation. They need higher wages. Also, if you look at the buildings, to get your garbage removed, prices have gone up. To get your windows washed, prices have gone up. So as all those prices have gone up, the condo fees got to go up as well. And this is really hurting a lot of people. Lawn and snow for some of our multiplexes, prices have gone up a lot on that. Now, as well, we're also building properties. So what do you notice? I know that wood has come down to where pre-pandemic prices are, but we're not talking the same for dishwashers and washing machines and wood flooring and so forth. Material way up. The labor to do it. I always talk about my painter. He used to be at $35 an hour, and now he's at $75 an hour. Unbelievable, right? Also, our property management has to charge more now because not only are we having more problems and more cost increases like we talked, now we're seeing even more turnover, but it depends on the market. So it costs a lot to turn a property over, go in, leave it empty for a month, do all the repairs, repaint it, whatever we have to do. So this is my question to you. If it's costing renters more, if it's costing landlords more, this is my question. Who is winning? Who is winning? Who's making money then? Because it's definitely not the landlord who's winning, and it's definitely not the renter who's winning. Only two people are winning in this example, and it's governments and banks. Governments and banks are making a ton of money. So remember, if you're talking about the United States, they have a debt of 32 trillion. We look at Canada, we're way over $1 trillion, and they're all doing accounting gimmicks to not show it being as high. Also, we know that unfunded liabilities in the States is at least like 150 trillion. In Canada, we're looking at unfunded liabilities of like $15 trillion. So the debt doesn't say everything. And what is an unfunded liability? Everyone gets confused by this, and it's not really confusing. If I have a debt, I have it on a credit card, right? And I have to pay that off next month. But if I had a baby, this is the example I always use. I know I paid for his food and diapers and stuff today, but I know that in 5 years, I got to send him to school. And I have to buy him a snowsuit. I live in Canada. I have to buy him a high chair. I have to buy him clothes and food and everything. I don't know how I'm going to pay it 5 years from now, but I know that that money has to be made somewhere, and I'm going to have to pay it. So when it comes to countries have been taking money off of its citizens through taxes, or private pension funds have been taking money from their employees regularly to put it aside later. So we have been paying this money into a pot, expecting to have a pension there. We expect, because we paid so much money over the years, to have health care. We expect to have the veterans want to have their benefits when they come back from war and so forth. Most places have some kind of Medicare, Medicaid in the United States. In Canada, they have healthcare and old age security because they paid for it for 60 years. They expect to have it. Now, the governments all gladly take the money, but they got to pay it back sometime, right? When do they have to pay it back? Well, they don't know. The money's already gone, long and spent. Okay, so only governments are making money from this, and banks are dumping all their cash into reverse repo right these days, and they're going to try to make a bunch of money off of it, and they are. They're making off like bandits. So they use debt and inflation to make money. And this is what we try to teach all the time is, how can you be the bank? How can you make money with inflation? Because you can do it very, very, very easily. And so what I want you to do, if you would just give a little bit of time, I don't care if you Google it or YouTube it, go look at something from a country that is going through high inflation. Look at Argentina or Venezuela or Lebanon right now, who is having very, very bad times, and examine what they do to make money in those types of environments, because if it works there, it'll work for you. So just try to do that. Here are my tips for you right now, because we're heading into a really, really, really tough economy for a lot of people. Number one, I encourage you to earn more money. Now, it sounds very easily to do that, but I'm saying maybe in the evenings, you can maybe go do Uber, or you can learn a new skill and try to set something up online where you can make some more revenue if you can. And also, a penny saved is a penny earned. So we're seeing that the price of things like toothpaste and food and everything is going up and up and up like crazy. And here is the thing. For example, just a year ago, I was buying these cans for $1, and now it's $1.50. That's up 50%. So if you cannot necessarily go out and get extra work, maybe you can buy more goods today because you're going to save so much more money on it when you actually need it. So maybe buy a couple extra tubes of toothpaste and an extra couple cans if you can, because this is going to save you a lot of money down the road. Okay, number 2, move to lower expenses. And so what could this include? This could include moving in with your parents into the basement if they're going to let you. It could also mean that you're going to relocate to a different area. Whatever you can do, be willing to do the things the majority of people are not in order to save expenses. Maybe you can move to an area and then one of your kids don't have to do daycare if you're in that local area, or it'll save you time. Whatever you can think. Next, I think that you should consider, not a popular one, having a roommate. I think that's very, very possible. It's a huge chunk of your rent taken off. Number 4, if you have a property, I would consider having to rent out the basement. A lot of basements that we see are always renovated, and they usually have a bathroom down there. So in order to get, you may have to get a city permit or something in order to put a kitchen down in the basement and a separate entrance. Make sure you have windows that follow fire code that somebody could get out. Just make sure it's safe for them, and rent out the basement. Just consider if you can get to that. It's a huge chunk of your mortgage. In a place like we live in Toronto, Canada, I mean, almost everybody has a basement rental. Number 5, this is a tough one. Move to a low tax place. So I'm saying in the United States, we're seeing some massive migration internally, where we're seeing people from the New York, Boston, Philly region all moving down to warmer states. We're seeing them leave expensive cities. And so we're seeing people piling into places like Florida, and people, I think they've lost 1 million in 2 years out of California that is leaving the state. High taxes, they're leaving that and going to places like Nevada, Texas, Florida, where it's 0% state tax. So in Canada, we have some areas that are low tax, and that would be somewhere like Alberta, where it's conservative, which would, for Americans, would be the equivalent of Republican. And the places that they're leaving are generally places that are not as friendly to landlords. So when you're going to be buying a property, consider buying in a place that is very landlord friendly in your jurisdiction, wherever that is. But I'm saying consider moving to a low tax place, perhaps if you move there. Now, again, they say my friends and family aren't there, but again, your friends and family aren't usually the ones paying the bills. Also, if you're staying in the city, I recommend that you get into a 2-bedroom that is rent controlled. So it really depends on what you mean by this. I have to give you some context. Generally, we're speaking about cities over 1 million people, number 1. And if you're going to stay in that type of city and it is rent controlled, meaning they have a cap on how much they can raise the rent every year, this is where you could win. And 2 bedrooms almost always, as people run out of cash and they have to put their homes on the market to sell, they have to now look to rent. And so when they look to rent, the number 1 place is usually families moving out of homes, and they got to move into a 2-bedroom. Most people don't want to sleep in the same bedroom as their kids. So 2 bedrooms always have high demand. So if you could get into a 2-bedroom now, before the prices really increase, look at some of these rent control places. We had an example before where they could raise rent by 2.5%, but the average rent is up how much? 22%. You just are making off with a 20% advantage. So I would recommend you getting into a rent controlled unit that is there. So where we live in Ontario, Toronto, buildings that are built after 2018 and occupied, then they have no limits on how much they can raise the rent. And it really depends on your jurisdiction, what type of property they could raise rent on or whatever. But you want to be in somewhere that's stable, and then start to figure out how we could ramp up the amount of money that you're making. So when you are going to rent, please just try to have some patience. There is huge lines for these. Sometimes there's 8, 10 different offers, which means that they had 100 people look at the unit. And so we always have to put our best foot forward. And before you make that offer, make sure that you have really good income, generally 36 to 40 times over what the rent is. You have to have good income, good credit, good references, and so on and so forth. So you come with a package and show that you are ready. All right, you guys, I wish you the very, very best. The crunch will be on for a bit of time. But here is the good thing for a lot of people. If you're looking to stay in your rental, there is an opportunity for you to make good arbitrage here by getting in a rent control building. If you're looking to buy a rental, the prices are coming down on properties and the rents are going up, which means that you will have an opportunity to buy when it's at a very, very good aggressive level for you. Also, if you're looking to buy in cities, the prices have been coming down in a lot of different jurisdictions. Some of the best opportunities that you've seen in 10 years are going to be coming up. So, I mean, there is going to be some really, really, really nice opportunities for people. I'm excited for it. I just hope that the least amount of people is going to get hurt through this. I wish you guys the very, very, very best. I hope that you have a fantastic evening and stay safe.